Let's talk about this real quick. This is the mealworm sifting machine. I'm actually over here today to put some things back together. There's some pieces here. I've got some improvements that I want to put on here. And so let's walk through it. First, let's walk through how it works, how it's not working, and what I'm doing to play with that and get it to that state. Let's talk about function and how this thing works. We have a hopper here up on top. It did come with a metal grate in order to separate out the pupa. What I've found is that it's too big for my pupa, especially the ones that have pupated early because of stress. It's just something that happens. You try to avoid it, but it happens. So I actually use a wire mesh tray up here. I'll go over use and process and function and actually show it being used in another video. But for right now, this is the hopper. It slides down this way. You've got a control right there. You can open or close that if you want it to go faster or slower. I have not really tinkered around with this too much, other than to open it enough to let it flow without it just absolutely going bonkers. So far this seems to be working. It's got a pretty small gap down in here. There's a shadow here, but down in here is where that gap is all along this. And it's working out pretty well. Nothing gets clogged up here. Nothing gets stuck. And so far, no major issues there. It drops down, and there's a lot of layers in here. And so this top layer right here, that separates the frass out. And so it drops into that. There's a screen that slides in there. I actually have that screen out because I need to change the screen. So this right here is the screen. It's just too open. So it gets all the frass out, it gets the chitin out. Things are separating very nicely from a frass larva perspective, except smaller larvae are going through. There's a couple different ways to tackle that. The way I'm going to do it at first is by putting in a custom size mesh so that the smaller larvae stay in and eventually make their way through. Long term though, those smaller larvae are underdeveloped, and so they probably need to be removed because they're just not growing fast enough from a production perspective. But back to the machine. So it goes down, the frass sifter there. The frass comes out this section here. See this hole here? When this is closed, the frass comes out. Okay, comes out of the machine. Then everything else from a larva perspective falls down onto the first rotating cloth. So this right here is on 2 cylinders on the ends, and it just rotates slowly. And the intention of this is for the live ones to hold on and the dead ones to fall off. I don't have a big die-off problem. I don't have a lot of dead mealworms, and so I can't really say whether this functions well or not. I do see some of the dead falling out here in a moment. I'll show you that. But the live ones are intended to stick onto this. And then you can see on both sides, there's this brush here and that brush on the other side. And the goal of that is, again, to keep the live ones contained within the cloth. And this thing spins this way, or rotates this way. It goes pretty slow, so it's not super fast. It gives them time to hold on. Then there's a brush on the underside of that, so that any that do hold on after they go upside down get brushed off, and then they go on to the second one. And what you'll see on the second one there is I took the brush off of that side, trying to make some adjustments, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So they come onto the second one, same concept. The live ones stick on, it turns this way. They start to fall off here, and you can see this guy here. Now this got messed up in shipping. I wish they would have just, like, this is a simple bolt here. I wish they would have packaged this inside the machine and then had some instructions for me to attach this once it got here, because it was bent in pretty badly, so I had to bend it back out to get it functional. And so they fall off here. You can see this is way far out. And the reason I did that is because I don't have that die-off issue like I mentioned. And what I found is that live ones were, like flying off of this. And so when this is in further, they would fall onto this and just fall down and out. And you want them to go back in here so they can be separated from a size perspective. And so I pulled this out probably a lot further than it really should be. But again, I don't have that die-off issue. And so then you can see the mesh, or not the mesh, you can see the metal grate there that has slats in it. I've talked about slats before, just like on the pupa sifter, the wooden pupa sifter. And so it's got that all the way down. They're not using mesh in this design, and it works really well. So what happens here, let me step back. So we're here now in the machine. Those guys come this way, fall down, and then this is where the separating of sizes happens. And there's one outlet here. You can see that. There's an identical one on the other side, and then there's one on the end. And so 3 different outputs, 3 different sizes. And the way that it does that, the way that it separates those sizes through the metal grids, as well as the way that it separates the frass, these two, where my fingers are, these two rock back and forth. Okay, so this is solid. The cloth in the middle is solid, and the frass and those screens rock back and forth. You can see there's a motor right here connected to that, and then the bottom is connected. The size separator is connected via this bar. And so once the machine is turned on and that is enabled, these 2 things move back and forth. The outer section, the frame, stays still, and then this center section, these 2 sections stay still. You can tighten the cloth by adjusting these guys. So you loosen everything, tighten or loosen the long bolt, and then tighten everything back up to secure it. They do need to be fairly tight. What I'm finding is that I have them as tight as I want it to go, because on the other side, these cloth pieces are moved via a very slow motor that uses a chain, and that chain is tight. And so I don't want to make these any tighter, which is why I took that brush off, and I'm just playing around with adjusting the brush instead of adjusting the canvas tightness anymore. But that's the machine. Let's talk about the fan on the end. And then the other thing I'll talk about before we move, you can see I've got this thing up on blocks. The manufacturer recommended putting it on blocks. It is on wheels, glides really easily. The wheels are the appropriate size for the machine, but they did say put it up on blocks once you've got it where you want it, so that everything vibrates and works successfully and correctly. As we move over here, kind of get into the things that aren't working so hot. So let's talk about, let me pull this off. Trying to make as little dust as possible here. There we go. So let's talk about the fan and the dust. Not very happy with this portion. So the fan works, very high volume fan. It was originally connected. This is the where the fan would pull from. Originally connected with this around to that. The fan is so powerful, it was sucking this in. This isn't strong enough. So I replaced that with a metal duct, and that worked much better. The problem is that this isn't a fine enough fabric to contain all the dust. And so dust went everywhere. Worst dust I've had in here since I got the dust collection working on the old sifting machine. And so what I did at first is I switched it over to my dust collector, and I'll show you that on the other side. But another option that I'm going to test is I bought a woodworking dust collector that has a 4-inch hole or connection on it. And so I'll connect it to this. It's a 2-micron bag. And so I'll test that at some point. Before that, I'm probably just going to leave it be for a little bit, because I hooked it up to my dust collector. There's my dust collector on the left there. And when we follow that hose, you'll see my MacGyvering over here, where I connected it with duct tape for now into the end of the machine. And so I will fix that. I've got clamps. I've got a size reducer from 6-inch to 4-inch. That's one of the projects for today. And then you can also see over here, so I've got the dust collector teed off or wide off. One's going to the back to basically suck all the dust, chitin, etc. that gets stirred up in there. That works really well. And then this other tube, generally what it does is it's got this little small hood on it, and I have a tote that sits here. The frass falls into it, and then I connect this to one corner of that tote so that it sucks up all the frass dust that's falling out. Longer term, what I'll do is connect this with a boot, basically, a cloth boot that helps to keep that dust in, doesn't let it out, just lets it all kind of settle down into the container. And then I won't need to dust collect from over here. But I can't do that until I fix the filter, not the filter, the mesh on the top to stop the larger larvae from coming through, or the smaller larvae, sorry. Because when those smaller larvae come through, they're coming out with the frass, and I can show you what that looks like. It looks like that. All those mealworms. And again, I probably don't want to keep those to reproduce them because they're going to grow slower. I'll probably just grow them out and get them out the door once they're big enough. Maybe I'll sell them as smaller ones. But for now, if I put a cloth boot around this, they'll just climb that and get back out. So the small hood there works well in the meantime. In general, though, this thing works. So it takes right now, about half the time from beginning to end to harvest trays with this versus my old method. And what that means is getting the trays from all the way, wherever they're at, moving them down here, getting them all squared away, putting them through that machine, separating out the sizes, and then not restacking, but resetting those into trays, adding wheat bran and putting them back into this back area where everything grows, right? So it's working. And I mentioned in a previous video, I harvested 330,000 in about 3.5 to 4 hours. That's, for me, a record. And I wasn't dead when I got done. Like, I still had energy. I was still able to enjoy that moment, really, because of this machine. That being said, several things that need to be fixed on this that just out of the box did not work. The one that I am most frustrated by, I think, is all of the larvae that fall out of this thing. And there's one main spot that I've found is the culprit. And we're going to come down and look at it, and I'll walk through what's happening. So inside the machine, let me try the top view. It's a little better. Inside the machine, you've got these two rollers. So you have this guy here, and you've got that one there. And that cylinder there rotates this top roller. And then there's a similar one down here, right? This thing rotates. Sorry, it's the other one, but the cylinders rotate it. And the issue that I found is there is a gap between the brush and the canvas. And so the manufacturer stated, just tighten the canvas up. Well, that's all well and good until you come over here and you see, so there's the cylinder from the top canvas, there's the cylinder from the bottom canvas, and then it goes down to the motor here, right? And ignore Death Trap Central. We'll talk about that. This chain is already super tight, and so I don't want to tighten it anymore. And so I'm looking at this from two different perspectives. One, I'm going to get some bolts that are longer. So that motor on the bottom is held there by 4 bolts. I'm going to get 4 longer bolts, connect it, and basically move that up and gain some height and gain some space so that I can then tighten the 2 canvases. So this one here tightens this way. No, wait, hold on. Yes, that's correct. To tighten it, I would move this one this way and that one the other way. And by doing that, I am making this chain even tighter. And so while this thing doesn't, fly, it goes slower than a bicycle chain. It's so tight. And so I need to buy some wiggle room. And to do that, I'm going to need to get some bolts and essentially raise this up, put another nut in as a spacer, find some legitimate spacers probably because I'm going to have to go to the store anyway, and get that motor up so that I can get some more space in here. While we're over here, let's just mention the wiring ridiculousness. It will be fixed. I have some aluminum that I can put in here. I did already rub something down there and the fan wire got exposed and shorted out. So I fixed that, got everything secured. That I just, yeah, that was, I've already talked to him. But anyway, the other way that I'm exploring addressing this is by getting these brushes lower, right? Just lower down. And honestly, it's just this center part that needs to be lowered down. You can see the play that's in that. So tightening is the better option, but lowering might also work as well. I'll try tightening first. I took this apart because I wanted to kind of understand how it all went together. It's very simple, but again, I'm not a mechanics person or mechanical person. And so taking things apart helps me understand it a lot better and figure out solutions and ask for help, quite honestly. And so that's why I took this apart. I found these. I can't recall what they are, but I did find them so I can get replacements. I'm also going to get basically replicas of everything. So when one of these controllers shorts out, I can just replace it. That way I'm not down. So this is going to get reattached. And then eventually these will get tighter so that as the mealworms drop off, so mealworms fall all the way down there is where they fall down onto the first canvas, right? And so what's happening is they are able to crawl under that brush and get on the outside of that canvas and essentially fall off. And so you can see a bunch of dead ones got pulled in here, similar scenario on the other side. And what's happening is they're falling off and out instead of staying on the canvas and eventually getting down into the screens down there. And so what I'm going to need to do is to fix that, and then that should reduce all of these larvae. I did calculate it at one point. I cleaned everything out, weighed it all, and after that long session of harvesting, I think it was 175 trays, 3.5 to 4 hours, there were 10,000 larvae down here. And so it's not like it's gushing, but it's problematic. That's why I built this, ad hoc moat here just to hold them in with some old ceiling tile stuff, whatever this stuff is called, and some tape that I had. That way I don't have to muck around with mealworms everywhere. But overall, this thing is going to be way better than the DIY. And once I get these few things figured out, it should be all good. I'm going to have, the goal anyway, is to have a frame made and then put the mesh on once I get the mesh figured out. I want to say it's like a 42, maybe a 46 mesh. I have to look at it to remember. But it does not I did test it already, and it does not let those smaller larvae through. So I think that's everything. I am pretty happy with this design, to be honest. I like the frass getting separated first up top because it does seem like the size separation works really well. And so as the sizes come out and get into these containers, they are pretty accurate. Much less variance, I think, than my manual mesh. And so I think that removing the frass really helps. But also, you have this entire span that is at least I'm pretty sure it's the entire span, that is 3 levels of mesh. Sorry, I keep saying mesh, 3 levels of screen. Maybe we can get a better view of that screen here. Yeah, see that screen? So there's 3 levels of that. And let me pinpoint that guy right there, that screen. There's 3 of that. And so they just come right on out. And it's working well. From a size variance perspective, really happy with it. This may open up the potential for me to sell alternate sizes as well. But again, we'll just kind of see how things pan out. Right now, I'm resetting all the smaller sizes and just harvesting the larger ones. Feel like that's everything. I'm going to get some stuff put back together. The sides open and close pretty easily, so I can open this up and get to everything that needs to be lubricated. I can check everything. I'm going to have to probably do routine, bolt checking to make sure everything's tight. But yeah, it's working well, and with a few changes, it's going to work fantastically. And again, I'll make some videos of it actually processing things. I'm still getting the hang of that to figure out the best, movements, the best way to, should I make the stack of trays over here, pour them in and go to the left? Should I go to the right? Yada, yada, yada. All those fine details are going to happen over time. But yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. The seller was great from a communication perspective up until about 3 weeks ago. Got the machine, got it working, quote unquote working, right, with all these issues. Started asking some questions. Things got pretty quiet. And so what I did, just to try to keep things moving along in a positive way, I would like duplicates of like the controllers and the electronic stuff. And so I asked for a quote on that. I said, let's turn this into a sales conversation again instead of support. Can you get me that information? I'm sure if that doesn't work, and I get some of these changes in place and buy myself some time, I can probably just get the model numbers off of these and look that up. And I'll probably do that anyway once I get a quote, just to validate everything's okay from a price perspective. But again, also is just kind of a way to try to re-engage the seller. I get where they're coming from, right? Like these are things that somebody with more experience and knowledge about mechanical things would probably just fix. But I know nothing. And so I'm asking a lot of questions, and I haven't paid for support is the other thing. Like that's probably another potential aspect here, is to reach out and say, hey, can I pay you for, somehow for helping me figure out ideas to solve this? Maybe they haven't run into it yet. I don't know. But overall, this is a step in the right direction. And if you guys have any questions, please just leave them here, and I'll do my best to answer.